My name is Dersim Sylwan, and I will be your moderator for today. And I'm really happy and excited about this panel. I will shortly let them introduce themselves, but just to give you some insight, we have three very experienced CMOs from three different industries or sectors of the iGaming business. And myself, I've been in the business for about 15 years, but I can really say that I think I've never experienced anything like what we're actually seeing right now with the Covid-19 virus, both from a personal and a business perspective. And that is also the topic and the theme for this panel today, the post-Covid-19 digital revolution. What does it mean today, and especially more important, how will this change us going forward and the way we work with our digital marketing? So, to start things off, I'm going to say hi, first of all, to Louise, to Klas and Sabrina, and ask you, Louise, to give an introduction of yourself and also how this has affected your company.
Thank you, Dersim. Great to be on the panel. I'm Louise Nylén. I'm the CMO of Trustly. And for those of you who don't know Trustly, we're a payments company that deliver online bank payments, which means payments that are drawn directly from your bank account. And we serve a lot of different industries, where gaming is one. And I think in the gaming industry, we're mostly known for our pay and play concept. Before I was with Trustly, I had the job of that Dersim has now. I was the CMO of LeoVegas. So I spent about 6 years with LeoVegas, both as CMO and also as deputy CEO, being part of building the company from a very small one to the leading operator that it is today. And in terms of how the COVID-19 situation has affected Trustly, I mean, I think it's very early to tell yet. But so far, we see that some of the sectors and industries that we're serving, they've been badly hit, whereas others are doing fine or even better than usual. So I'd say the net effect for us at the moment is quite neutral. But again, I believe, we're very early into this, so let's see what the future holds.
Thank you, Louise. And Sabrina, please, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Sabrina Soldà. I'm the CMO of BtoBet, which is an iGaming platform and sportsbook software provider. We are a multinational company and mainly leading with our software in Latin America and Africa. So prior of that, I have been working in marketing as a marketing specialist for over 20 years, not only in iGaming, B2B side, but also in the B2C side of the marketing, which in mass market industries like telecommunication, automotive, and food and beverage. And this gave me the opportunity, let's say, to knowledge how to analyze in depth the behavior of final consumers, and especially in this period that we are seeing a new world order in terms of consumers' behavior. It's really important to act fast to analyze what will be their behaviors next. In terms of how COVID-19 affected our business and company, let's say that apart from shifting to completely teleworking from home, let's say that we were already accustomed to, we have already put in place agile processes, being a multinational companies, to coordinate and ease the workflow between all the employees in different offices in Europe. So we had already put in place some measures, but COVID-19 gave us the boost of, let's say, for the safety of the employees to turn this completely in teleworking in a very quick time. In terms of business, of course, as our clients has been affected as bookmakers and not only retails, but in online world as well. being the sportsbook live events shut down, we have been already hit as well. But we spent this time in consolidating and opening new verticals for our clients. And I will explain later more.
Thank you, Sabrina. And Klas?
Hi, I'm Klas Winberg. I'm the CMO at Raketech. Raketech is an affiliate or a performance marketing company listed in Stockholm. We're based in Malta. And I also have a long background in iGaming, like you, Dersim. Started 2004 at Expect, and then I was 7 years at Betfair as country and area manager. So very much a long time on the operator side of things, doing marketing primarily. And then I actually took the step into the affiliate side of things with Catena Media, where I was there for 4 years as VP Sales and Marketing, and now have joined Raketech since about 6 months ago. I'm very excited to be here. In terms of COVID-19, we already had sort of an ambition before this all happened that we would go towards a more virtual working environment. But this definitely brought us from sort of a soft launch to really a hard trial and immediate and full. But so far, so good, I would say. We'll see how people will hold up after 3 or 4 months, but and we will also gradually probably open up the offices as well. But so far, so good.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, Klas, do you see any challenges or opportunities right now that perhaps you didn't plan for when you were planning for this some time ago, working from home?
Working from home, yeah. I mean, the challenges, I think, for somebody in our positions where we have bigger teams with a lot of people is to really, it's hard to replace that water cooler chat, the 5-minute chat where you actually resolve a lot of things that would actually maybe take away a need for a 45 or 1 hour meeting. So I do find myself spending a lot of time in meetings. It feels like that's come up working from home. In fact, my wife, who is a bit shocked at how much time I spend, she said she understands why I don't talk so much in the evening. So yeah, I think that's a major the challenge as a manager. But yeah.
And Louise, you touched upon it, but in terms of productivity within Trustly, do you see any changes to the better or worse?
Well, I think we're doing okay, to be honest. I think we're all a bit surprised, but we're keeping busy, making sure we have clear plans, clear deliverables, and so everyone knows what they need to do. But of course, I agree with Klas. I mean, one thing with the water cooler as well is that now maybe you need to book a meeting to take that 5-minute chat that you would have in the office, which then turns into a half-hour meeting instead. So I mean, you lose some productivity in not being able to just chit chat or solve things really quickly across the desk. But so far so good, I'd say. But again, I mean, the majority of our staff are based in Sweden, and as you all know, we're living under quite limited restrictions here. So people still have the opportunity of going outside, being slightly social, but doing some things outside of work, and I think that is also key to the well-being and productivity. So I think we're gaining from that as well.
Okay, so Sabrina, I mean, something that I must ask about, of course, is you're coming from the platform supplier part of the business, and of course, sports is a big part of your business. How have you kind of been handling this and mitigated for this? Are there any other products, perhaps, that you like esports? There's a lot of discussions about that.
Yes, so let's say that as BtoBet platform, being an open platform, we have been working in the past in all the past years to enlarge the offers and the verticals being natively available in the platform. So it was easier for us just to activate those verticals to clients which at the beginning, before COVID-19, they were not activating them because they mainly were focused on sportsbook. We have natively 80,000 games in the online as online casinos from 100 of different providers, virtual sports, esports, fantasy sports. So we had to act fast. They'll say that the strength for us and the important thing is not to leave our clients alone to mitigate the shortfall of the sports book. So we acted very fast with them to activate all those different verticals. And but not only, we had to assist them in acknowledge different marketing strategies and business strategies to acquire and retain players in those verticals, which are a bit different from sportsbook. Another important plan that we have acted, of course, is to starting moving and helping and making the path for all the retailers to make the path of going online. So an example, we have Mexican clients who has 30 different land-based casinos who in these past 2 months he saw his online casino GGR growth of 125%. So we help him in moving straight away online. And this is in Mexico. In Africa also we have client who is retails and online distributed in 21 countries, which saw great growth in online casino side. Of course, if you are talking about mainly sportsbook provider, the situation will resume when the live leagues, the first live leagues will start playing again, which hopefully they will start by the beginning of June, some of them. Let's say that the sportsbook fall all over was around the 70% of loss, and virtual sports has grown almost 40% more than it was before COVID-19. In terms of esports, in our platform, we don't see big data because we are leader in LATAM and Africa, which are not the right continent for esports players. But we can ask to our colleagues to give some data on esports. Of course, is an attractive vertical, which will be even more attracting for the new targets in the future.
Yeah.
But at the moment in LATAM and in Africa is still very, this is still not good vertical to point to.
Okay,
Yes.
no, I think that's quite a lot of good, examples of how the transformation to online is kind of being speeding up quite a lot right now. Klas, working with the affiliate business, you get to kind of be part of several different iGaming businesses. Where do you see kind of the biggest changes right now? Is it the regulatory things that are happening, or is it that the fact that the sports is gone, or what's your view?
Yeah, unfortunately, one has led to the other right now in markets that we are heavily invested in. We are probably the biggest affiliate in Sweden, for instance, and obviously we're a little worried about what we're seeing over there. So that's having an impact. Spain is doing even more immediate things on their ends, and there's a number of markets where they're acting on this. So that, in combination with the fact that sports is completely off the table, obviously has everyone a little bit tense and wondering what's going on. And so again, we had an ambition to go global. like most operators in iGaming, and this has obviously sped up those ambitions even further. We have in no way given up on Sweden, but you know, you have to look over your exposure these days. Casino luckily is remaining strong, but within line, I would say. I think again, if you go to other markets than the Nordics, you would see bigger moves there. I mean, the general move from offline to online is definitely sped up by COVID. I think we are now at around 16-17% share of the online gambling is now online, where you know we were projected to be maybe at 13. So I think we warp speed about 2 years ahead of time with that whole migration, which in the long term obviously is something that we in online gaming should be very excited about. So that is, I guess, the silver lining that I can see with this right now is that whole migration to online.
And just a question on that then, I mean, it's an interesting stats that you bring up. Do you see that being sustainable? Do you think that's for the long term, or is that something we will see for now and then maybe go back to?
Yeah, I think it's actually long term because it's about breaking a habit, and I think that is where the resistance has been. The people that have been used to go to their betting store, etc. It's a habit. It's out of habit, and now when they're sort of forced to online, I think they quite quickly realize that okay, it's maybe nice to have a chat and an ice cream while I place a bet, but this is so convenient. So if nothing else, I think people will at least start doing both. So I think it's a habit that's here to stay. So yeah. Yeah,
completely agree. And Louise, I mean, you work within payment and of course at Trustly, you have so much data. Do you see any clear consumer trends or shifts in consumer trends right now?
Well, first of all, the Trustly solutions are debit solutions, meaning that you pay with money that you already have. So we don't offer anything on credit. So unfortunately, I can't provide any data on sort of the debit versus credit trend, which I would myself find very interesting to see, because I think there are so many different movements working in different directions, and it's difficult to judge the net effect without having the data, because you would assume that people now are more careful with the money that they have, which would then lean towards more debit purchases. On the other hand, if you don't have that much money to spend, you might have to purchase things rather on credit or on installments. But anyway, moving into what we can see in our data, and looking at the different industries that we serve, I'd see, one significant thing we see is an uplift in e-commerce. And now, of course, e-commerce is very broad. I mean, that's about everything you can buy online. So some parts of the sector have been hit and others are thriving. But we see an increase in fashion, which I think is a bit counterintuitive, to be honest. But I would like to get back to what I started talking about, that we're so early into this. So I think what we're seeing now isn't anything that we can label as trends. We're seeing a snapshot at this point in time, and it depends on several different things. So taking this fashion e-com boost, for example, I'm also on the board of a fashion e-tailer, so I have a bit of insight from that angle as well. I think there's definitely the shift, the same shift as Klas was just referring to, from offline to online. That is one part. But then also a lot of these e-tailers have been extremely nervous about the uncertain future and worried about getting left with a lot of obsolete stock. So all the sales were a lot earlier this spring, and they were more aggressive as well. So, I mean, one reason to seeing this uptake is actually the result of very aggressive sales. Yeah.
No, yes, I think it's interesting about fashion, because actually today I read that Naked wrote that they succeeded in all their targets for April, which obviously was good. On the other hand, you read about quite many fashion companies that actually have to kind of close down their businesses. Do you see that that's because some of them are much more mature when it comes to digital transformation, or why do you think that is?
I mean, I think the majorities that are having trouble now, of course, are the ones that are offline or mainly offline. And they're struggling naturally because people can't come to the stores. So, of course, all the online retailers will be the ones that are benefiting. But then it's also depending on what type of focus you have with your fashion. If it's trend or if it's a lot of homeware, they're doing great, sort of your lounge wear or whatever you call it. So it's different niches as well, of course. But I think another interesting trend that we see is an uptick in remittance, people sending money abroad. So you can also see, I mean, if you want to analyze that, it could be people being very concerned about their relatives abroad and trying to support as much as they can. But again, this is more a snapshot than a trend, I would expect.
And have you adjusted your digital marketing or the way that you work from this, or can you adjusting to it?
I think that the main part there is that as a B2B player, where a large part of our marketing investment is in events. And those are, of course, cancelled and postponed, and a lot of them are put to the fall of 2020, but who knows if they're going to happen either. So, but at the same time as everyone is cancelling, I think it's amazing to see the quick adaptation, what we're actually part of here today as well with iGamingNext moving online. So a lot of things are happening online, but this means a shift in resources, budgets, contents, planning, and so we are doing a lot of adaptations. And of course, it's a disadvantage not having the face-to-face interactions that we benefit from a lot when we meet current and potential customers at events.
Okay, I think we talked a little bit about it, and it's more of an open question to all of you. I think we're seeing now a lot of regulatory actions being taken. We've seen it in Sweden the other week. Of course, we know that Spain has implemented a marketing ban. UK is saying that you can only basically promote responsible gaming on TV certain hours. And Latvia even took it one step further and closed down some part of the business. What's your view on this? And considering that the consumer is all digital, is it even possible to tell a consumer what they can do, where they can play or not? And what's the potential backside of this, you would say?
Yes.
Go ahead, Sabrina.
No, we are seeing, I mean, of course, this is... to answer your question, is it possible? Yes, it is possible because it is being putting in place from governments. And of course, governments, they do their job and safeguard the safety of all the citizens. And as we have seen in Europe, what is happening, we have other examples in other parts of the world. For example, Colombia just legalized the live casino, for example, a couple of weeks ago. We are seeing that US states are considering regularizing the online gaming in more states in this moment. Nevada just allowed sportsbook to offer market on esports. So we see some governments in some continents which are closer, the more mature markets, and others which are more new markets that they are opening for, of course, taxation streams levels that will also add governments and states to overcome this situation. So it's different from a worldwide perspective. But what I think it could be a risk in this moment for the point of view of punters and players which are accustomed to play in a certain way, that they're going to look for fulfill their entertainment needs into illegal markets, for example. This is a risk. I just put it like in the table to discuss about, but this could be a risk.
Yeah, I think it's a big difference from country to country. So I could have more maybe sympathy and understanding for the Spanish way of acting, because they truly see increases of 200-300%, and it's by and large down to this migration from offline to online that's causing that. So I guess they were wondering what's going on and get a little nervous and put in a very, very immediate and very temporary restriction, whereas the Swedish one is a little bit more harder to understand because we're not seeing that kind of surge from offline to online yet. They feel compelled to act on it, where we had a quite functioning system. So that's a bit strange to see that difference, but that's my major concern. And then also, I'm yet to see a good example of successful channelization. Even just going out talking about the fact that we're going to introduce this ban in Sweden has actually sent a lot of players abroad before it even happened. I amused myself by going on to Google Trends and looking at some search terms, and it's kind of spiked to have casino without a license in Sweden. So, and you've seen some very restrictive countries like Norway trying to battle payment blocking, etc. Is kind of chopping off a head of a hydra. You get a new solution. So it's unless you go the Chinese way, it's going to be very tough. So I'm not envious of the Swedish Gambling Commission to try to implement whatever is there now. So, well. It's and honestly, I think it's a backlash of maybe 20 years of very good times and unregulated times. So I think it's an overcompensation on behalf of the Gambling Commission. So it's trying to almost to pay back for a period where they weren't in control. So once some of these legislations were introduced, it was not done in moderation. It's gone overboard to some extent, to the point where you wonder, is the intention actually to create a sound gambling environment, or is it really to sort of slowly but gradually kill it? So these are the things that we're going to have to follow going forward.
Yeah. And would you say that perhaps they even used timing to implement some of these?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, maybe it's a strong statement, but that's just supporting the debate article that came out recently in Sweden. I think they came to the similar conclusion. I think because there's no traffic numbers to base it on, so there hasn't been the similar surge in Sweden. So that's why it doesn't really make sense out of that perspective. I think if there was, then maybe I would understand more.
Something that I think I've been seeing now, especially because of all of these regulatory implementations, is that more and more competitors are starting to work closer and closer to each other. And perhaps not only because of that, but because of the whole COVID-19 situation. Is that something that you, Louise, see as well within the payment sector a little bit? Or also if you look at iGaming business, which you've been part of, do you see any change there?
Oh, it's an interesting question. And I think, I don't have a specific example as such, but I believe that this crisis is sort of, moving all of us tighter together. We all share sort of a common enemy and a common challenge here. So I do think, there is a lot more of open communication and sharing of information. So I'm not seeing anything specifically. If you're referring to, for example, the debate article that came out from some of the top operators, that's probably a good example, but I don't have a similar one for the payments industry.
Okay. Yeah, Klas?
We have something similar in the on the affiliate side, where it's 4 or 5 of us coming together to for instance, create a a standard reporting system. So being an affiliate, you get served a lot of different data that are, showing various different things. The terminology is different, which makes our life a little bit difficult to take good, decisions and based on the BI we're getting. So I think that is a great example of our side of the industry coming together to work out a standard for that, and sort of deal with the legacy of not having one. So just an example from our end.
When we look at digital marketing right now, something I'm picking up is that more and more companies want to do something good for the society because of the COVID-19. And when it comes to the iGaming business, of course, it can be a kind of a tricky question. What's your take on charity and giving back to the customers during these times? Sabrina, if you want to give your thoughts.
Actually, we have been putting in place an action with a partner of ours, which is working on in Brazil, especially. And at the moment, we are, let's say, giving part of these revenues to feed the poor people in Brazil, especially in favelas, which is our partners who is taking care about that because he's locally based, but we are supporting his actions and giving all the software to put in place this action for free, and we are sharing all the revenues to the people in Brazil. This is one, for example, of charity action that we are doing. More, I mean, our customers, our partners, which are directly involved in the different countries, they are putting in place different kind of charities actions, and we are supporting them for doing so.
And how has this been have everyone been positive about this, or have you heard any comments, because it's a little bit linked to gambling and so?
No, so far we didn't have any questioning on that and any negative response from anybody, and instead we had a good response from even local medias, which they were giving visibility to these actions. Of course, any ad in this time is welcome. So at least we do not see any discriminatory factor for being in the gambling industry. Okay.
So Louise, I just want to kind of go back to something you said, and that was about e-commerce, and that they are you can see some shifts there. Do you see that the iGaming business can learn from the e-commerce sector, and if so, anything specific?
In terms of this particular crisis?
Oh, I think more in general, perhaps, when it comes to how they work with the digital marketing and sales.
I mean, from my perspective, I think it's the iGaming community that's cutting edge when it comes to digital marketing, and I know that the e-com sector are looking a lot towards iGaming. So in terms of marketing, I would say that it's probably the other way around in terms of, especially the usage of data. I mean, knowing how, at least being well aware of how LeoVegas measures and optimizes and plans based on very granular data. I think this approach is not as prominent in the general e-com sphere.
Okay, interesting. And coming back to you, Louise, you mentioned that you used to do B2C, of course, when you're working with an operator, and now you're doing mainly B2B. What's your kind of first impressions of this, the change?
I think it's, looking at B2B, what we tend to forget is that B2B has a B2C side as well. So when you look at it from the outside, I think you often forget about that. Because if you take Trustly as an example, I mean, we have the merchants, which are the ones that we sell directly to. So it would be the operators or the the e-commerce sites or the travel agencies, etc. And then, of course, we have the consumers, which are the ones that actually use the service in the end. And we need to make sure that we talk to both of these. And to complicate it even further, I mean, the people at the operator who are buying Trustly is also an end user. So you have to base your communication, of course, on the same fundamentals, but still you need to tweak the messaging to these different target groups. I mean, if we take Pay and Play for an example, which is a solution where the customer basically registers by making a deposit. So it's a very smooth flow. When we talk about that with an operator, we will, of course, use the terminology, conversion, how this will boost conversion, and we will show data to back it up. But when we're talking to a user of this, so a player, then we'll talk about the smooth registration process and how you can start to play right away and you don't need to go through these lengthy registration forms, etc. So it's the same fundamentals, but two very different messages and also different channels to reach these. So I would say, in a sense, there is an added probably complexity to the B2B world.
Yeah.
And then also coming back to data, I mean, the sales cycles are so long in a B2B world, so you can't use the data in real time as you can in at least with an operator. I mean, when you have a campaign in an operator side, you will see the customers converting right away, but the conversion that we see in a B2B campaign, that is then in leads. So when we have a lead, that means that it's a company that's interested in working with Trustly or adding Trustly as a payment solution. But from having that lead to having actual business, it can be everything from a month to over a year, depending on the circumstances. So it's very different in terms of measuring the impact of your marketing activities.
And when you look at what's happening now with the COVID-19, do you see an increased requests or an increased amount of leads? I mean, businesses that wants to kind of go online quicker, get more payment functions and so on?
I mean, I see that we are doing well at this point, and we have a lot of interest. But I think it's not so much due to the COVID-19, but rather a momentum of online bank payments in general in Europe, and also in particularly in Sweden, we see there's just a new law that is coming into effect beginning of July, that regulates the presentation of payment options in a checkout, where a credit option can no longer be on top. So there needs to be a debit option, which is the first one, and also a credit option cannot be pre-selected. And this is something that we see a movement across Europe and also the rest of the world, with an increasing concern of the rise in consumer credit. Okay. So debit options are becoming more attractive, and even, there's even a momentum towards regulation for the debit options.
So not very unlike the limitations or the implementations that we see in the iGaming, but of course then you have the regulatory coming from both your kind of payment sector, but also from the iGaming one. And looking at Sweden and the one that came last week with a maximum 5,000 deposit, I think it was per operator. I mean, of course, the pay and play product, how do you kind of mitigate that? Or how are you thinking from a product point of view when it comes to this?
I mean, we're in close dialogue with the operators, of course, because I think we very much share the view on this. On this proposal from Ardalan Shekarabi, as you do. And there is what has always been the advantage of the Trustly solution and the pay and play in terms of fast in and out, which is a benefit for the player. But in this situation now, with a limit on the deposit, this now becomes a disadvantage. So we're in close dialogue with our operators to make sure that we find ways of mitigating this.
But do you feel that the Swedish Gambling Authority and the government, that they understand your product and how it works? Is that something that we need to educate them even further?
I think we need to educate them in how the industry works. And I think this is a challenge of the regulations in all markets, that there seems to be this general view of, the harder measures, the better from a regulatory perspective. And it's surprising to see how there doesn't seem to be the understanding of how the market moves towards a gray or black market instead when you tighten the regulated market. I mean, I remember when there was the marketing ban introduced in Italy, for example, and all the licensed operators were gone from Google, but what you could find as top search results were the unlicensed ones. And that was on the same day. So it's so clear, these shifts.
Yeah.
So I think we would all benefit from trying to educate the regulators even further.
Yeah, good point. And on that topic, Klas, I mean, as an affiliate, you work with a business model that usually you will be paid on the value of the customers or how many customers you bring in. And of course, all of that changes then in like one day after these kind of new rules. How do you work with that and together with the operators? What's the dialogue like?
Luckily, so far, we haven't seen much of this, so it's a bit of a first. So it remains to be seen, and it remains to be seen where this legislation ends up and what actually comes out of it. And also remains to be seen if players will jump around and open accounts with everyone to get around sort of the deposit limitation, etc. Probably not, but obviously we don't live in a silo. If the player values go down for our clients, they will go down for us as well. So we'll have to look at that and see in which other ways we can try to provide value. But long term, obviously, we're going to have to look at our options and what other markets we want to focus on. So, it's a bit of an unusual situation.
Yeah.
But we're having a very, very close conversation with all our key operators on this, and it's very honest and transparent. So.
Yeah. And I guess that's the key, considering how quickly things changes right now.
Exactly.
Sabrina, I guess you are the sports expert here, being one of your key products. When the football and the sports kind of goes back to normal and betting can resume at normal pace, how do you see the consumers and the behave? How do you think they will behave? Will they play more or less or the same?
Okay, we do not have, of course, as Louise said, any data to analyze and to forecast what will be the situation in the future, because it's quite an anomaly and really singular in history. So what we have done is to try to divide this period and the future one in 3 phases. So first of all, we cannot make a whole bucket of all the world, because the behavior of the consumer will be different. For example, in Europe, that it's a more mature market, consumers, but not only for the gaming industry, all the industries has been affected because the consumers' priority has changed. And fears and scare of what will happen will remain for a while in their minds. So we need to consider this. So Europe has been the most heated continent at the moment, and the habits, the free and the habits they had before, they will never become the same in a short period. In the long period, yes, of course. So probably Europe will resume the same revenues in betting in the 2021. Speaking about what is mainly our markets at the moment, so Latin America and Africa. So we had to try to analyze what is happening, and let's say that the first phase, which we call the resilience phase, which started at the beginning of the COVID-19, and it will be ending on the end of May, probably. This is what we are looking for, or the major leagues to restart playing, and this will depend on the testing of the COVID-19 testing on the players, of course. So Latin America, as Africa, as Europe, as punters, the sports was mainly trinated by football. Okay, so major leagues have been stopped till the end of May, probably Germany. I read the news this morning that Germany might resume by the 10th of May, but it's not sure since 3 players have been discovered positive in the past week, so we will see. But in any case, the first phase is the one where operators and mainly bookmakers, and I'm talking about also retailers, had to work and act very fast to widen that offer in terms of sports betting odds and diversify their sports odds, but also to put in place a real omni-channel environment for the phase. Then we forecast the second phase, which will be is corresponding to the resuming of the past championship of the major leagues, which will hopefully start in the first days of June until the end of August, where the operators which have been prepared and acted fast in the first phase will see resuming their GGR in the second phase. Then to pass to the third phase, which is the restart of the new championships, which will start from September. And there we will see who will be the leaders and who will be the laggards, of course, in terms of B2B perspective. So who has been the company who managed to shift and to survive to the shifts and to adapt very fast to the fast changing behavior of the consumers. So it is hard to say. Let's say that we will see better results from the operator sides, which have adopted all these measures. So players will resume in more concentrated numbers of operators rather than spreading in with a lot of competitors. So this is something that we have been studying and thinking of in the last, of course, past 3 months. Yeah. We are positive that many operators, for example, many of our clients, they have been working on this in the past months, and it's incredible that in these couple of months we had received a lot of requests and demand from other operators who wants to shift to a better player-centric ecosystem. So this is at least positive on how the industry is aware of the situation and is aware of the consumer behavior and is aware that there will be major changes in the bettor's behavior. For sure, analyzing the consumer behavior, not only about iGaming, but it will be in the all the major industry, that we will have a shift of
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of questions, so I'll read the first one. It's from Jari Merikanto, and his question is, do you think COVID is leading to a digital revolution or evolution in iGaming by being a rapid transformation for the customers and operators, or something that has been evolving over time anyway? Klas, maybe something for you to reflect on?
Sorry, classic. Yeah, so like I was saying before, I think it is just speeding up evolution. The move to online is definitely happening in a much more rapid pace now. So even though we are a little scared and tense right now, I think in the long run it's very positive. And I can tell from our end, being a B2B company, there's a lot of activity. It feels like sort of a pressure cooker in some ways. There's so much going on at the operators, but towards us, it's just a bit of a calm because the big decisions are right now being made, but are not executed just yet. But so there's, it's a sped up evolution is my answer to that.
And we had another question here, I guess maybe a little bit to Louise. It's from John Christmas. And it is coming back to a little bit what you were talking about credit, Louise. So the question is, a disturbing trend in Eastern Europe is fast credit companies lending small amounts, hundreds of euros or maximum a couple thousand euros to unsophisticated clients at 300% interest. Is there a way to stop such clients from using that money for iGaming?
Oh. That was a challenging one. I mean, first of all, that's probably not just a disturbing trend in Eastern Europe. And I think, we're seeing also a debate going on in Sweden at the moment where they're talking about the central, I think you would call it the debt register, a little bit maybe to compare to Spelpaus or GamStop, but where you can, where companies can reach out and see your accumulated debt across different, lending companies. Because what it turns out is that people take small loans in all different places, and they don't have a collected view of the total debt. Then when it comes to avoiding that people use this for gaming, I mean, I know that the responsible gaming measures that are in place, from my experience at LeoVegas, I mean, this is something that the operators do look at. I mean, usually it starts with the problematic behavior in a player, and then when you start researching what type of money that they are using for gambling, this will surface in terms of their bank account statements, etc. So the operators do have a responsibility here, but at the same time, it is only triggered by a problematic behavior. It's impossible for a gaming company to have full control of what the source of funds just a casual gamer is playing for. So not a definite answer, but just a few reflections on that.
Yeah, no, good reflections. And one more question from Jari Merikanto is, do you think that the effects of COVID will change how we meet customers? Will the effect, for example, of social distancing have unwanted effects for the iGaming segment, or is it only viewed as positive?
It's a question to everybody.
Yeah, sorry, open question, yeah.
I mean, yes. I mean, not for the gaming. Of course, in this situation where people are trying to go back to normality, what they want is something to release the tension and the fears that they have. And if sports betting, for example, I'm always speaking about sports event, it will resume in the, they will be happy to watch the matches, even though the stadium will be closed, but this will still be a good entertainment and feeling of release in this period. Of course, it's another story for the land-based casino and retail bookmakers. Okay, so we see the perspective of the players which are now asking for sports to resume, but of course, or the land-based realities, they need to put in place some measures for social distances. And I know that I've seen and I looked some articles that they've been published in Italy, which was the first country written in Europe. And they have been thinking about some plexiglass or other sort of barriers to put in place a strategy for customers to go and place their bets, for example, at the counters. For casino, land-based casino, it will be the same. It's the same as everything. The retailers will be eaten, of course. But fortunately, those operators who are mainly retailers and they are acted fast, as I told previously, now they put in place strategies to also retain their clients online. So, but yes, of course, the retail iGaming business will be hitting for those who didn't act fast with precise measurements.
Okay, thank you very much, Sabrina. I think we're getting close to the end here, and actually I just read that we had 369 viewers at peak, which is great, and I want to say thank you to all of you watching, and of course thank you to Louise, Klas and Sabrina for a great panel. Pierre will be here to wrap up the day 2 very shortly, and yeah, thanks a lot for viewing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.